Today, for the first time in 10 years, I walked through the gates of my parents' house. Thanksgiving. Back when I still lived here, this day was always the most depressing day of the year for me. The dinner table, where families are supposed to gather and reaffirm their love, was, for me, nothing more than a cold tribunal questioning my very own worth. The luxurious house I stepped into after a decade looked exactly the same. Inside me, there was only an icy stillness. And my family's reaction to seeing me again was colder than I had ever imagined. Well, if it isn't Heather. What a shabby outfit. Life in San Francisco must be very hard on you. The first to greet me was my sister Kathy. She looked me up and down as if appraising merchandise and wore an openly scornful smile. She holds the title of trustee at a major art museum thanks to our father's connections, but in truth, she was only lending her name. Her life revolved around buying luxury goods and dressing up for charity galas. Seriously, that bag? What brand is it? I've never even seen it before. My younger sister Nicole spoke without lifting her eyes from her phone screen for more than a second. She, too, was a so-called CEO of a lifestyle brand founded with our father's money, but the actual management was left to others. All she did was post snapshots of her extravagant life on social media. Well, Heather, you came all this way back. That's something, at least. Only my mother reached for my hand with a worried expression. But the moment she noticed my father's stern gaze, she quickly let go. And when my father looked at me, his eyes were as indifferent as if I were a stone on the roadside. He muttered just one thing. You came. Sit down. It's been 10 years since we last saw each other, but not a single word of warmth. I said nothing and quietly took my old place at the farthest corner of the table. The glittering chandelier, the expensive paintings covering the walls, and the family's perfect, smiling faces. To an outsider, we might have looked like a happy, privileged family. But the truth was, I had always been nothing more than a voiceless doll imprisoned in this luxurious house. What my father wanted was an obedient, compliant daughter who would listen without question. I was allowed to exist only when I played the role he demanded. This extravagant dinner was, just like a decade ago, nothing but theater. Kathy and Nicole competed over how dazzling they could present their hollow achievements. At the museum where I'm a trustee, a famous painter's work was just donated to us. Kathy bragged as if the credit were hers. Look at this watch, my new boyfriend gave it to me. It's a limited edition, Nicole said, flaunting the expensive timepiece. Both my father and mother gazed at them with genuine pride. No one looked at me. No one even tried to imagine the hell I had survived these past 10 years. To them, I was still nothing more than the daughter who failed at her dreams and never managed to build a proper career. And that was fine. In fact, that misunderstanding worked to my advantage. Confronted with this unchanged scene, memories surged back into my mind with painful clarity. That stormy night 10 years ago. That was where everything began. A decade ago, I had just graduated from college and joined my father's company. I graduated top of my class from MIT, majoring in architecture and real estate development. More than anyone, I worried about the company's future. I believed that succeeding my father was both my dream and my destiny. And for the first time, I spoke my own opinion to him. Father, the company won't survive unless we change with the times. With what I learned at MIT, I can make this company bigger, better, and stronger. It was a proposal born off of sleepless nights, thought through with all my heart. All I wanted was to be useful to him, to hear him praise me just once. But his answer shattered my hope and passion into pieces. Silence. His roar echoed through the vast president's office. He seized the documents I had prepared with such care and slammed them to the floor as if they were filth. Don't you dare meddle in my business, you silly girl. With nothing more than scraps of knowledge from college, you think you can lecture me? Don't be so full of yourself. My father's face was flushed red with rage. I was struck speechless, trembling under the shock. His pride was simply too immense. He could never accept the idea of listening to anyone else, least of all his own daughter, younger, less experienced, daring to challenge him. The more correct my proposal might have been, the more it seemed like an attack on his own management, and that, to him, was unbearable humiliation. An excellent potential successor, his daughter, on one side, and a warped pride incapable of acknowledging her on the other. That fierce conflict twisted my father into nothing more than an enraged tyrant. Listen to me, Heather. This company grew by my hands, my way. I don't have time to indulge some silly little girl's fantasies. In my eyes, there was only the cold figure of a father crushing my dreams and passion under his heel. That night, an emergency family meeting was called. What had happened in the president's office had already reached Kathy and Nicole. They looked at me with the same smirking curiosity one might give to a circus act. Heather, going against father? Have you lost your mind? Kathy sighed theatrically. I told you, didn't I? This girl isn't cut out for the company. Exactly, Nicole chimed in without ever lifting her eyes from her phone. Not even knowing your place. How shameful. You're a disgrace to the Irving name. I turned desperately to my mother for help. But as always, she only lowered her eyes in silence. Her look seemed to beg me, please, don't make this worse. So that's how it was. In this house, speaking about truth, speaking of hope for the future, that was a crime. In this house, only dolls that answered yes to my father's every word was loved. And inside me, something snapped. Then my father gave his final decree. You are a shame to the Irving family. Don't ever show your face to me again. At that moment, fear and sorrow vanished from my heart. Instead, a cold, quiet resolve welled up from the depths of my soul. I forced my trembling legs to stand, looked straight at my father and the entire family, and said, very well. I'll leave. Thank you for disowning me. But I didn't forget to add, remember this. In 10 years, I will prove you wrong. I'll prove to you that my way, and I myself, were never wrong. Do as you like. You'll be wandering the streets by tomorrow. My father spat. Biting my lips so hard no one could see, I left the room without ever looking back. That very day, I packed only a single suitcase with the barest essentials. A few childhood photos, my college diploma, and that tattered proposal my father had slammed to the floor. I tucked those carefully into my bag. In the middle of the night, once the house was asleep, I quietly opened the front door. I knew I would never cross that threshold again. The thought brought tears to my eyes, but I held them back, because my battle was only just beginning. That night, I abandoned the house filled with memories, and the family that had given up on loving me completely. I headed for San Francisco, a vast city on the West Coast where no one knew me. I shed the name Irving, the chain that bound me, and adopted the alias G. Watson. The first place I rented was a tiny, damp apartment in the city's cheapest district. The window opened onto nothing but the wall of the next building. No sunlight ever reached the room. That dark little space became the starting point of my new kingdom. The first few months were nothing short of hell. In a city where I had no connections, no experience, and no money, no company would hire me. The little cash I'd brought was gone in no time. By day, I grilled burgers at a fast food joint. By night, I washed dishes in a small bar. Every spare moment, I buried myself in furious study of real estate. Meals were once a day at best, a discounted loaf of bread from the supermarket or a cup of instant noodles. Many nights, hunger kept me awake. The frustration, the misery, the crushing loneliness, it made me want to give up everything, over and over again. On Christmas night, sitting alone in my freezing room with a broken heater, I stared out at the sparkling holiday lights outside. Back at my parents' luxurious house, they were probably laughing together by the warm fireplace. That thought broke me, and I cried silently into the night. But in the dream I drifted into that night, the face that appeared was my father's, the same face that had spat the words, "You are a disgrace." I jolted awake in an instant. No, I couldn't end here. I hadn't come all this way just to cry. I was here to prove, to the very people who made me weep, that I had been right all along. From that night forward, I never shed another tear. My heart burned with a cold fire called revenge. Watch me, Father. I will achieve far greater success than you ever did, with my way, not yours. That vow was all that kept me moving. The turning point came about a year after I arrived in San Francisco. With the little money I had saved, I founded my own company, Silverstone Real Estate. A company in name only, of course. The sole employee was me. That shabby apartment room served as my headquarters. My very first job was laughably small. I bought an old garage that looked ready to collapse, something no one else in the city wanted. For 3 months, I poured myself into its renovation. I sketched the plans, painted the walls, even pitched in with plumbing when needed, using every ounce of knowledge I had gained at university. That filthy garage was reborn as a bright, stylish artist studio. And when it sold for a price far beyond my expectations, I stood in front of the bank ATM, staring at the new balance in my account over and over again. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the floor and cried aloud for the first time in months. This time, they were tears of triumph. That small victory marked the beginning of my unstoppable rise. Under the name G. Watson, I became known as the mysterious investor with a talent for uncovering hidden value in neglected properties. Piece by piece, I built success upon success, slowly gathering allies. And over 10 years, Silverstone Real Estate grew into a force too large for anyone to ignore. We established offices in a skyscraper overlooking the San Francisco skyline, employing hundreds of people. All the while, I dissected my father's company as though performing an autopsy. His outdated business model, his obsolete methods, and above all, his arrogance. I approached his former business partners as G. Watson. I listened carefully to their frustrations with Irving Real Estate, their resentment of his tyrannical management. One by one, I earned their trust. And quietly, I took control of key lands and rights surrounding the Irving family's empire. I pulled out the stones from the walls of the castle my father had built, methodically, from the outside. By the time he realized it, the moats and the fortress itself had already been filled in by my own hands. During all those years, I never once spoke to my father or my sisters. With my mother, only occasional phone calls, just a few times a year, always initiated by her. "Heather, are you doing well? Are you eating properly?" Her voice always sounded anxious, tinged with guilt. But I never revealed my success. "Oh, I'm doing all right. Running a small company. Nothing special." That was all I ever said, brushing off her questions. Because my plan was far from finished. And then, a few weeks ago, for the first time in 10 years, I received an invitation to Thanksgiving at the family home. I got a phone call from my mother. But her words carried my father's unmistakable command. "Your father says you must come home this year. He has something important to announce." I accepted without hesitation. At last, the time had come. The stage for my revenge had finally been set. And so, on this Thanksgiving after 10 long years, I returned. As dinner came to a close, my father cleared his throat heavily. With the same cold gaze he had turned on me years ago, he made his announcement for all to hear. "I have important news. We will be selling the family's estates, the vacation homes, the penthouse, all of it." "Oh, how wonderful. You're starting a new venture, aren't you?" Kathy and Nicole squealed like children. Then, as if to deliver the final blow, my father turned to me. "And of course, Heather, you will receive nothing. You are disowned. That is why you were invited here today, to be reminded of it." At his words, my sisters let out shrill, triumphant laughter. "So it's finally ours, all ours." Kathy and Nicole clutched each other's hands with glee. But this time, their cruelty no longer hurt me. I quietly set my wine glass down on the table and asked my father just one question. "Who is buying those properties?" With the smug smile of a man about to impart a final lesson to his pitiful daughter, he replied proudly, "It's a world you'll never belong to, but I'll tell you. The buyer is Silverstone Real Estate, the firm rumored to be the fastest growing on the West Coast. They valued our holdings fairly and offered an extraordinary $3 million. Their president is no dreamer like you, but a true man of ability. Silverstone Real Estate." Kathy repeated the name in a dreamy voice. "I've heard of them. Their head is a mysterious figure named G. Watson, never shows his face in the media, a cold and calculating businessman." "Father, what a brilliant negotiation." My father beamed. "Yes. G. Watson is a man who doesn't lie with numbers. Not an idealist like you." "G. Watson, you say?" I echoed the name slowly, pouring 10 years of emotion into the words. Then I placed my napkin on the table, straightened my back, and rose from my chair. Every pair of eyes turned and fixed on me. For the first time, it felt as though light had finally pierced the end of a long, dark tunnel. I stood tall and, in the silence of the dining room, declared clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Father, the president of Silverstone Real Estate is." I looked him straight in the eye and let the smile I had hidden in my heart for a decade finally break free. "Me." A moment of silence, as if sound itself had been erased from the world. Then, one by one, my family's faces shifted from shock to confusion to despair. It was, to me, the most beautiful masterpiece I had ever witnessed. Lies. It has to be lies. Daddy, don't be fooled. She could never be the CEO of such a company. She's always been our family's failure. Kathy was the first to recover, shrieking hysterically. "She's right," Nicole chimed in. "You probably just latched onto some rich man and are parroting his words. Be honest, you're still living miserably in San Francisco, aren't you? You only came here to scam us for money." Their words cut like knives, but now they had no power over me. Only my mother, her face pale, whispered in a trembling voice, "Heather, please stop this. Don't torment your father any further." I let my gaze drift slowly over each of their faces. Then, from my bag, I drew out a thick file and set it calmly on the table. "A failure? A fraud?" I replied coolly. "Kathy, does this look like a joke to you?" I opened the file and slid the first page across the table. There it was, the final purchase contract for the very properties we were discussing, bearing my signature as G. Watson. $3 million. The same extraordinary price Father praised just moments ago. But unfortunately for you, that's merely the down payment I offered to acquire your holdings. I flipped to the next section and spread out the audited financial statements, complete with the accountant's signature. My company, Silverstone Real Estate, currently holds total assets of $200 million. If I wished, I could buy out the entire Irving estate with pocket change. The room fell into absolute silence. My sisters stared between the documents and me, dumbfounded, unable to speak. My father, his face drained of all color, clutched the papers in his trembling hands, reading them over and over again. Finally, understanding crashed down on him, and he slumped helplessly into his chair. Why, Heather?" His hoarse voice echoed through the dining room, filled not with anger now, but with despair and disbelief. When? When did you start betraying me, betraying my company?" Like a wounded lion, he groaned the words. To him, the realization that his empire had been quietly dismantled from within by the daughter he had scorned as a dreamer was a humiliation worse than death. The balance of power had shifted, completely, irrevocably. In response to my father's question, I nodded quietly, yet firmly. 10 years, Father. I saw the blood drain from his face. From the day you tore up my proposal with your own hands. From that day, everything I did was for this moment. 10 years? His voice shook violently as he repeated the words. That day, from the moment I cast you out, All these years you lived only for this revenge? To destroy the company I built with my life, to tear apart the family I created, was that your only reason to live? My father's anguished cry echoed through the dining room. It was no longer anger, it was the voice of despair. Regret over the mistake of driving out the daughter who could have been his brightest successor. The crushing realization that everything he had built was now in that daughter's hands. His arrogant pride was reduced to dust. Destroy? No, father, that's not it, I answered slowly. I wanted to rebuild. To recreate the place you destroyed, my place. To make you finally see the worth of your daughter, the worth you refused to acknowledge. I looked straight into his eyes, piercing through. I lived these 10 years for only one reason, to hear you say, you were right. Revenge. Kathy spat the word, her voice dripping with hatred. Yes, this is revenge. You deceived us for 10 years, scheming to seize this house. How monstrous are you? My father, too, forced out words through trembling lips. So, Heather, this is what you wanted? To watch your family kneel at your feet? Is that what satisfies you? I met their eyes and answered quietly, but with absolute clarity. Yes. At first, it was. My words made them all catch their breath. In the beginning, revenge was my only goal. To make you regret what you did, to bring you to your knees. I lived every day obsessed with that thought. To build a company greater than father's. To stand in a more dazzling world than my sister. To hold more than my younger sister ever could. That was my only aim. I paused, remembering those long, lonely nights in San Francisco. But then, I realized something. The night I opened champagne in a room overlooking the San Francisco skyline, I told myself this was the taste of victory. But the sound of my own footsteps echoed through that vast, empty space. And I understood. Even if I possessed the world's wealth, if I was alone, it was nothing but a gilded prison. My voice may have trembled slightly. What I truly wanted wasn't money. It wasn't a company. I turned and looked directly at my mother's tearful eyes. I wanted to face my family again. To hear, just once, that my efforts meant something. That your daughter had worked this hard and that you could see it. Finally, I turned back to my father. And from you, Father, I only wanted one thing. One simple phrase. Well done, Heather. You are my pride. For that one phrase, I endured 10 years of hell. It was the raw cry of my soul. This contract can't be undone, I said calmly. But I do not intend to strip you of everything. Father, Mother, you may continue living in the vacation home. As for Kathy and Nicole, I will give you the chance to work in my company. But only if you're willing to cast aside your pride and start from the bottom. It wasn't punishment. It was an invitation, the last and the first to reconciliation. To become a true family. And over the year that followed, things began to change, slowly but surely. My father, drained of all after that night, began to regain a spark when I showed him my grandfather's old business journals, forgotten in the archives. Now, he serves as a special advisor in my company, passing on his hard-earned experience to the younger employees. Kathy and Nicole resisted at first. But with no other path forward, they reluctantly began working for me. Kathy, once a trustee of an art museum funded only by father's donations. Nicole, once an influencer flaunting a lifestyle propped up by Irving wealth. Both of them had lived lives like castles built on sand, unable to stand even a single day without father's wealth and connections. Now, unable to pay next month's rent on their penthouses or leases on their luxury cars, they tasted, for the first time, the harsh reality of the world. To them, I sent an envelope through my lawyer. Inside, employment contracts offering positions as trainees in my company. And so, one day, stripped of pride and pretense, they appeared outside my office, faces drawn, humbled. We'd like to talk. I ushered them quietly into the president's office. Please let us work. Under you. I looked at my sisters for a long moment before I spoke quietly. What I wanted was for you to stand on your own, to know the dignity of carving out a life with your own hands, not leaning on someone else's money or family name. Because you are my sisters, I didn't want you to keep living hollow lives built on illusions. My offer isn't a sweet one. You'll start with menial tasks, grunt work. If you don't perform, you'll be dismissed without mercy. If you have the courage to accept that, then come tomorrow. It was my final, true invitation for us to become sisters in the real sense. Starting with the lowest jobs, they learned, truly for the first time, what it meant to bow their heads, to earn money through their own effort, to feel both its harshness and its worth. Now they've grown unrecognizably stronger, indispensable in their respective departments. One afternoon, my father came to my office unannounced. He stood in silence for a while, gazing out the window. Then he turned slowly toward me and apologized, so deeply it seemed to come from his very soul. "Forgive me." His strained voice filled the quiet office. You were the most gifted. I had realized it long ago. You had more talent for business than anyone. That's why I believed you were the only true successor. For the first time, my father revealed the anguish he had kept hidden in his heart. But I was too arrogant, too foolish. I couldn't bring myself to acknowledge your brilliant proposal. Your being right felt as if it erased everything I had accomplished, and that terrified me. So I pushed you away. I failed as a father. I'm truly sorry. I couldn't say a word. I only watched as his shoulders trembled. The 10 years had not been wasted. At last, I had heard the words I had always longed for. And my mother, who had once lived only to preserve appearances, to appease my father, seemed reborn. She found a new purpose in supporting young women entrepreneurs. One night, after the great success of an event she had organized, she and I shared a quiet toast together. "Mother, your speech tonight was wonderful. Confident, inspiring. I was so proud of you." She smiled shyly, then reached to squeeze my hand. "Thank you, Heather. There is something I must apologize for." Her eyes glistened with tears. "That night, when you left the house alone, I couldn't protect you. I was too afraid of your father, and all I did was wait for the storm to pass. I failed as a mother. I'm so sorry." I gently held her hand tighter. "No, don't apologize, Mother. I had always known." Since the day I left, she secretly deposited money each month into my old bank account without Father knowing. I never once withdrew a cent. I had sworn to live on my own strength. But knowing it was there warmed me through many freezing nights in San Francisco. I always knew you cared. I heard it in your voice every time you called. So please, stop blaming yourself. Thank you, Mother. We embraced tightly, neither of us knowing who moved first. Filling 10 years of distance, silently. Success was never the best revenge. It was simply the one ticket to stitch back together the shattered pieces of our family's hearts.